Hello, third period Algebra 2. This is Mr. Peden here. Obviously, I'm not actually with you today. Instead, you get to have my voice over the speakers. Sorry I could not be here with you today. I'm in Portland, Oregon for a wedding. But I miss you all dearly, and I'm looking forward to being back on Monday. I want to make sure that we have a great, productive day. I know we're very kind of anxious to really be making some progress on this challenging subject, which is Algebra 2. So with that in mind, I opted to actually shift your quiz to Tuesday because we hadn't quite done what we needed to prepare yet. But we're gonna make sure we're ready for it. So today it's a very important day to kind of be working on absolute value equations and inequalities. But before I begin, I just wanted to start by saying thank you to the substitute teacher in the room, as well as thank you to all of you for supporting each other, for supporting yourselves, for supporting the substitute teacher in the room. I expect it to be a great day with a lot of learning. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for really leaning into what we're doing today. Let's make it a great class. So let's go over what we're doing today. First of all, we're going to be watching a video, and you are actually watching it already. In that video, we'll be doing some work with absolute value equations and inequalities. I just want to make sure you're clear on the expectation. The expectation is level 0. That is really important to allow everyone that think time to really engage with math and really focus in on what we're going to be taking some notes on. You'll see some good guided examples. Actually, during the video, at a certain point, I'll tell the facilitator to pause the video, and you will have some chance to do a couple practice problems. During that time for today, I'm going to go and tell you you can work with your team at or below a level 2 volume if you wish. So thanks for being productive during that time and really making sure that you're understanding these absolute value equations and inequalities, which are really important. Last but not least, before you leave today, make sure you get the absolute value equations and inequalities homework from the substitute teacher. That homework is going to be due on Monday. That's our goal, to make sure that we're getting ready for a quiz on Tuesday so that we can really be moving into this math. Some really good math we're going to see this year. So thank you for your full engagement today. Just a reminder, in our notebooks, we are doing something different this year. On the right-hand side is going to be input, where you're putting kind of like the guided examples, the definitions, the roadmaps, typical notes, your practice problems. Basically, what you would usually be thinking of as your notes. Kind of where you're actually doing the math, where you're actually writing down the definitions of terms, all of that. And on the left-hand side is this totally new thing that I'm really excited about. We're reserving a whole page for every page of notes for our space, our output, our wonderings, our questions that we have. You're watching a video today. You won't be able to raise a hand and ask a question. So write it in the output. Write connections you're making, predictions you're making. This reminds me of blank. It's a really cool opportunity, so I really challenge you to use that space in the notebook as your space to be thinking above the math. So thanks for doing that. If you have not already done so, I would imagine most of you did this already, but if you've not already done so, please take out your graph paper notebook. If someone in your team does not have a graph paper notebook, if you could please support them. Remember, in this class, we support one another and help one another and make sure that we're all set up for success. Please support them by offering them maybe some loose leaf for the day. If you're somebody that doesn't have your graph paper notebook, take out some loose leaf if you have it. You can ask if it's in your locker. You're not going to go get it today. Instead, you'll take notes on your loose leaf paper. Everyone's taking notes. And if you're taking it on loose leaf paper, I expect that to be transferred to your graph paper notebook that you're creating for this class. Thanks for doing that. At this time, everyone should be completely ready to go. We can pause the video if anybody in the class is not completely ready to go with a writing utensil and notes. Hopefully you didn't have to pause it. Let's go ahead and begin. So, we went through this, not yesterday. We went through this on Wednesday. I just wanted to project it again to make sure it was kind of rushed. So let's just kind of project it one more time and make sure we understood it, have another chance to consider it. So this was the first guided practice absolute value equation that we solved. Osasure volunteered to come up, and he had some really good thoughts about how to solve this absolute value equation. Remember, the first step, it says this in your roadmap, in your notes, the first step in any absolute value equation is to make sure you isolate the absolute value. So we wanted to get this absolute value of negative 4k plus 1 by itself. I have it in red here, so it kind of stands out. Now to get it by itself, Osasure noticed it was being divided by 5, so we wanted to do the opposite of dividing by 5, so we multiplied both sides of the equation by 5 to get rid of that divided by 5. We then were left with the absolute value of negative 4k plus 1 is equal to 15. Once the absolute value is isolated all by itself, then you set up two equations, one equal to the positive value here, one equal to the negative value. And the reason why is this expression in that blue cloud, well, that whole thing could be 15 because the absolute value of 15 is 15. Or that blue cloud, that whole expression could end up being equal to negative 15 because that's also going to work. The absolute value of negative 15 gives us 15. So we set up two equations. Okay? We set up two equations here and here. Once we set up those two equations, we simply solve them algebraically. We ended up getting negative 7 halves and 4. Last step, make sure you plug them in to make sure they work. And if you plug in negative 7 halves into the original equation and 4 into the original equation, both of them ended up working. You can go and do that and confirm for yourself, but that's always a good practice with absolute value, because sometimes weird things happen with absolute value. You always want to plug them back in to the original equation. All right? Let's see one more guided practice problem. Go ahead and copy down number 2 in your notebook. So number 2, absolute value of 8 minus 2r minus 7 is equal to 3. So at this point, I fully expect everyone in the class has copied this down. I expect you're staying at level 0 for one more guided practice problem. You'll get a chance to try these out shortly. So here we go. If we're going to solve this absolute value inequality, the first thing we're going to do is get the absolute value expression, which is here, by itself. To get it by itself, well, notice there's a minus 7 outside of the absolute value. Let's get rid of that. What's the opposite of subtracting 7? Well, it is adding 7. If you add 7 to one side of the equation, you must add 7 to the other side. So we get to absolute value of 8 minus 2r is equal to 10. Once you have the absolute value isolated, what we're going to do is set up the two equations, okay? So, the two equations, we're just going to take whatever's in the absolute value, which is 8 minus 2r. We're not going to change anything about it. We're just saying that whole expression could be equal to 10, right? Because the absolute value of 10 is 10. Or that blue cloud, that whole thing, could end up being negative 10. Notice, I'm not changing anything about the expression within the absolute value. So the two equations are 8 minus 2r is equal to 10, or 8 minus 2r could also be equal to negative 10. Those are our two equations. When we solve these algebraically, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides. This takes us to negative 2r is equal to 2, and r is equal to negative 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's on now 6:30 p.m. Please be advised that the will be closing down within the next 30 minutes at 7 p.m. sharp.
Alright, sorry for the interruption. That was Alvin reminding me that I have to leave the building pretty soon, so sorry for the delay. In the other equation, you're going to subtract 8 from both sides. We end up with negative 2r is equal to negative 18. R is equal to, divide both sides by negative 2, 9. And the last thing I'd like us to do, please plug these into the original equation to check that they work. Let's test this out. Plug in negative 1 first of all. 2 times negative 1 is negative 2. 8 minus negative 2 is 8 plus 2 is 10. Absolute value of 10 is 10 minus 7 is indeed equal to 3. That one works. Let's plug in 9 into the original equation. So plugging 9 in for r here. 2 times 9 is 18. 8 minus 18 is negative 10. Absolute value of negative 10 is 10. 10 minus 7 is 3. Hey! Hooray! Yippee! Both of them work. Great. At this time, I would like you all to have the opportunity to kind of struggle through some of these. Okay? Remember, without struggle, there's no progress. Remember, the more we kind of grapple with challenging math, the more we grow our brains. So hopefully you find some things to be challenging when you work through these, because that's how we grow our brains. If not, make sure you're supporting others in the room, keeping a growth mindset for yourself and for everybody else. I'd like you to do 1, 3, 9, and 10. I like 1, 3, 8, 9. 1, 3, 8, 9. And as you work, I want you to be aware there's something you need to be careful of. You cannot distribute into an absolute value. Okay? So keep that in mind. All right? Keep that in mind. So 1, 3, 8, and 9. Substitute teacher, there should be some of these inserts on the desk by the document camera, so you can help make sure all students have this. If for some reason you don't have it, you can just copy down the problems 1, 3, 8, and 9. Level 2 productive chatter is okay. You can also work individually during this time if you prefer. I just expect you to really engage in these problems. Go ahead and pause the video. Take about 5 minutes to make sure you get all of these problems completed. Okay? So try them out. Help each other out. Compare your answers. Let's do it. So pause the video. All right, hopefully you paused the video. If you haven't already, please pause it. This is meant to be shown after we've had those 4 or 5 minutes of really productive work time. This is what number 1 should have looked like. Number 1, the absolute value was already isolated, set equal to 17 and negative 17. You get 2 solutions, 7 and negative 27. If you plug both of those into the original equality, the original equation, they both work. Great. And this one was tricky. I believe this was number 9. So the big temptation at number 9 is to add 9 and 10 to get 19. The problem there is you would be messing up order of operations. 10 is next to the absolute value of 7m minus n. It is connected by multiplication. You want to undo equations when you're trying to isolate something in reverse gems. Okay? You want to get rid of subtraction addition first. So you want to get rid of that plus 9 out front. So you're going to subtract 9 from both sides first. Okay? After that, you have 10. Remember this being multiplied by absolute value of 7m minus 9. Divide both sides by 10, you get absolute value of 7m minus 9 is equal to 2. At this point, you have the absolute value isolated. So set up your 2 equations. It can be equal to 2, or it can be equal to negative 2. You get 2 solutions, 11 sevens, and 1. Plug them back in. They both work. They both work. Those are 2 solutions to the original equation. Now remember, the tricky thing there again was it's tempting to add 9 and 10 and get 19, but 10 is actually attached to that absolute value expression in green. It's attached to it by multiplication, so you can't do that. All right, so at this time, you're going to, I'll project. All right, sorry about that. I messed up the video for a second, so that was probably kind of weird. We are not going to take the time probably right now to do this as a think, pair, share, unless it feels like you all have some extra time. But this is just kind of a cool thing to take a look at. What is the only difference between these 2 equations? Okay, so you can think to yourself about what the difference is between these 2. They're pretty similar. And notice, in this equation, would we add 9 and 10 and get 19y? No, we would not. It's actually the same thing as that other equation. The only difference is one is y, one is absolute value of 7m minus 9. This concludes this video. Alright, once again, I messed up. This concludes this video. I hope you enjoyed it. At this time, you should be moving on to absolute value inequalities, which is another video that should be pulled up. Let's go ahead and do that. Adios.